All right, folks, buckle up for this deep dive. We're going deep into the world of law and ideology, two things that might seem worlds apart, but trust me, they're more intertwined than you might think.
You hit the nail on the head. It's this weird paradox, right? We think of law as this neutral set of rules, like a referee in the game of life. But then ideology comes along, bringing all its baggage and biases, and suddenly that neutrality starts to look a bit shaky.
Yeah, and to untangle this knot, we're diving into some serious philosophical territory. We've got excerpts from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on law and ideology, so get ready to stretch those brain muscles.
Oh, absolutely. And the big question we're wrestling with is how can law, something designed to be impartial, be swayed by ideology, which is, by its very nature, biased?
Right. It's like trying to unmix oil and water. How can something as objective as law be influenced by something as subjective as ideology? So to even begin tackling this, we need to define ideology itself. It's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean in this context?
Well, it's interesting to look back at how the concept has evolved. Back in the late 18th century, Destutt de Tracy, this French philosopher, saw ideology as a science of ideas. He thought ideas sprang from the material world around us, and understanding this science could lead to, like, real social progress.
So it was about tracing the origins and evolution of ideas, right? Like where do these thoughts come from and how do they change over time?
Yeah, exactly. But over time, that meaning shifted. Ideology became less about the study of ideas and more about the ideas themselves, especially those with political punch. It's about the ideas that shape our worldview, like our sense of right and wrong, and how we believe the world should work.
So it's not just some abstract head in the clouds thinking. Ideology is about ideas that drive action, the ideas that make people want to change the world in specific ways.
Precisely. And the sociologist Daniel Bell, writing in the 1960s, called ideology an action-oriented system of beliefs. So it's not really about finding some objective truth, but about rallying people around shared beliefs and goals.
Bell even went so far as to say we were seeing the end of ideology as liberal democracy and capitalism spread around the world. But, well, history had other plans, didn't it?
Yeah, that's one prediction that didn't quite pan out. But what Bell was getting at is this key aspect of ideology. Its power to shape what we believe is possible and desirable in the political realm.
Okay, so that's the more liberal take on ideology. But then we have the more radical perspective, a lot of which comes from Marx and Engels.
Right. For Marx and Engels, ideology was inherently conservative. It's a tool for maintaining the status quo, the existing power structures. And it often does this by, like, masking the true nature of those structures, making them seem natural or even good for everyone when they're really not.
It's like that saying, the fish doesn't know it's in water. We're so used to the dominant ideology, we don't even question its basic assumptions.
Exactly. And that's why they argued that a truly just society wouldn't even need ideology, because there wouldn't be these power imbalances built on exploitation or oppression. And if you take that further, they said, we wouldn't need law as we know it either.
Whoa, wait a minute, that's a pretty big claim. If law is always ideological, as this perspective suggests, doesn't that just throw the whole idea of legal fairness and the rule of law out the window? If the system's rigged from the start, how can we even talk about justice?
Well, Marx's view is more nuanced than that. He didn't think ideology was pure fiction, totally disconnected from reality. He said it's more like a distorted reflection of reality. Think of his camera obscura metaphor. The image is upside down, but it's still recognizably the thing being photographed.
So even though the image is flipped, it's still grounded in something real, which means even the people in power can get caught in the web of their own ideology. They might not be intentionally deceiving, they might truly believe in the system they're upholding, flawed as it may be.
Precisely. And this leads us to a big question. If ideology is always at work, shaping how we see the world and our place in it, how can we even begin to talk about the sources of law? Is it even possible to separate law from the ideology that forms it?
Yeah, that's a great question to ponder. And it leads us right into one of the classic showdowns in legal philosophy, natural law versus legal positivism. Just to recap, natural law folks say law is inherently tied to morality. There are, like, universal moral principles that should shape how laws are made and interpreted. But legal positivists, on the other hand, they believe that law is based on social facts, not necessarily moral ones. Law is whatever the sovereign or the state says it is, whether it's morally right or not.
Right. And the radical view of ideology kind of throws a wrench into that whole debate, because if there are always outside forces, whether they're political, economic, or social, shaping the law, Can we really talk about an essence of law? Does it even have a core identity separate from all these influences?
It's like trying to find a pristine water source in a world where every river and stream has already absorbed pollution from the air, you know?
Exactly. So, where does this leave us? If we accept that ideology is intertwined with law, does that mean we have to just give up on achieving justice through legal means?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one we'll keep grappling with as we delve deeper into this fascinating and complex topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've agreed that ideology and law are like deeply intertwined. But if we can't fully separate them, how do we even start to judge how legitimate or fair a legal system is? Like, if everything's tainted by ideology, how can we tell what's just and what's not?
Well, that's where it gets really, really interesting. It's not enough to just say, oh, law is ideological, so everything's relative. We have to go deeper. We have to look at the specific ways ideology works within the legal system.
So it's about looking at the actual effects of ideology,
Right.
how it shapes how legal stuff plays out and how power is spread around in society.
Yeah, exactly. And to do that, we need to explore some of the more current views on ideology, especially those that focus on how law, power, and identity all intersect.
And this is where thinkers like Shelby and Stanley come in, right?
Yeah.
They've really pushed this whole conversation forward by linking ideology to issues of social justice and what marginalized groups go through.
Absolutely. Shelby, for instance, argues that ideology isn't just about holding certain beliefs, it's about holding beliefs that are, well, he calls them epistemically defective, and that work to promote social injustice.
Okay, break that down for me a bit. What does epistemically defective even mean here?
It means that these beliefs are flawed at their core. They don't accurately reflect reality. They might be based on bad logic or incomplete evidence or just a refusal to see certain facts or viewpoints. But the point is, these messed up beliefs aren't just harmless misunderstandings. They actually help keep unjust social structures in place.
So it's like a virus spreading misinformation, distorting how we see the world. It makes it harder to see the truth about how power really works.
I mean, that's a great way to put it. And Shelby uses a lot from the Marxist tradition and critical race theory to expose these flaws in our thinking. He wants to show how ideologies that prop up things like racism, sexism, or other kinds of oppression, they rely on these distorted views of reality to justify inequality and maintain the status quo.
It's like using philosophy as a tool, like a scalpel, to dissect these harmful ideologies and really see what makes them tick.
Precisely. And Stanley takes this critique even further. He says that all ideology is inherently flawed in this way, not just the ones that are obviously promoting injustice.
Hold on a sec. So he's saying that any system of belief with a political agenda is automatically suspicious. Does that mean we can't trust any political ideology, even the ones trying to make a more just world?
It's a good question, and it's something Stanley wrestles with in his work. He believes that ideology is so tied up with our identities and our place in society that it's basically impossible to be completely objective.
It's like we're all wearing these ideological lenses that color how we see the world,
Yeah.
and we don't even realize it half the time.
Exactly, and this makes it really tough to just, think our way out of ideology. We need more than just logic and reason. We need to look critically at our own assumptions and biases and understand how our own position in society might be shaping what we think.
So if all ideology is messed up to some extent, does that mean we're stuck in these warped ways of thinking? Are we doomed to just keep perpetuating injustice just by being involved in politics at all?
Not necessarily. The philosopher Sally Haslanger, she offers a more nuanced view. She argues that ideology isn't just about our beliefs. It's baked into our attitudes, our habits, our practices, the whole fabric of how we live in society.
So it's not just about what we think, but how we act, how we treat other people, how we move through the world. It's the unspoken stuff, the norms we take for granted that shape our daily lives.
Yeah, exactly. And this makes ideology much more widespread and harder to escape. It's not just a set of ideas we can debate or take down, it's woven into the very structure of our social interactions and institutions.
This is where those material conditions that Marx was talking about come back in, doesn't it? Ideology helps solidify the power structures that already exist, making them seem natural and unavoidable. And that, in turn, affects how we behave and ends up reinforcing those very structures. It's like this never-ending cycle.
Absolutely. And this takes us to a critical question. If ideology is so deep in everything we do, how can we even hope to create a more just world?
It almost feels like asking, how can we escape gravity? Ideology is like this invisible force constantly pulling us in a certain direction, shaping our choices and what we think is possible.
It's a huge challenge, no doubt. But
Right.
that doesn't mean we should just give up. Even if we can't totally get rid of ideology, becoming aware of its influence is a powerful first step.
So it's about shining a light on these hidden gears, making the invisible visible, right? Once we see how ideology is working, we can start to challenge it.
Exactly. It lets us ask the hard questions. Whose interests does this law or policy really serve? What assumptions is it making about human nature, about social order, about the role of the state? Are there other ways to think about this that might lead to more just outcomes?
It's like getting a new pair of glasses, ideology detecting glasses. We can start to see the world differently, and that can be incredibly powerful.
Exactly. And remember, ideology isn't always a bad thing. It can be a force for positive change, too. Think about social movements for civil rights, women's suffrage, environmental justice. All of these relied on powerful ideologies to get people moving and challenge the way things were.
So it's not about wiping out ideology altogether. It's about understanding how it works and using that knowledge to create a more just and equitable world. We need to become more conscious of the ideologies we're buying into and really think about what they mean.
Couldn't have said it better myself. But let's push this even further. What if we turn this critical lens onto liberal political philosophy itself?
Ooh, now we're getting meta. You're saying that even the ideas behind liberal democracies could be a form of ideology.
Exactly. There's been a lot of debate, especially from feminist and critical race theory perspectives, about the limits of liberal thought, particularly the work of thinkers like John Rawls.
Rawls, the champion of justice as fairness. What's the criticism there?
Well, they argue that his emphasis on procedural justice and state neutrality, even though it's well-intentioned, can actually mask and perpetuate existing inequalities.
Okay, remind me again, what does procedural justice mean?
It's the idea that justice is achieved by following fair and impartial processes, regardless of what the outcome is, like think due process, equal treatment under the law. These are all cornerstones of procedural justice.
So the critique is that focusing too much on the process can distract us from the actual results, which could still be really unequal even if everyone technically had a fair shot.
Precisely. And critics also point out that Rawls' focus on state neutrality, the idea that the state shouldn't endorse any particular idea of the good life, that can be problematic too.
Because let's be real, the state is never truly neutral, right? It's always making choices that favor certain values or interests over others, even if it's not being explicit about it.
Right. And this is connected to the concept of perfectionism, which pushes back against the liberal emphasis on neutrality. Perfectionists say that the state should actively promote human flourishing and cultivate certain virtues that they believe are essential for a good society.
So instead of just ensuring a level playing field, perfectionists want the state to actively help people live better lives, according to some shared vision of what a good life should look like.
Exactly. And this raises some really thought-provoking questions about the role of ideology in shaping our political ideals. Are we maybe limiting our chances of achieving true justice by holding on so tightly to procedural fairness and state neutrality? Are we perhaps missing other paths to a more just and equitable society because we're stuck in a particular ideological framework?
It's like we're so focused on playing by the rules that we've forgotten what the game is even about. We become so invested in the procedures that we've lost sight of the real goal, making a world where everyone can truly thrive.
And that brings us to a crucial point. Even our most deeply held principles, the ones we see as the foundation of a just society, can be products of ideology. It's a humbling realization, but it's also empowering. If we can see that even our most cherished beliefs aren't immune to ideological influence, we can start having more honest and productive conversations about what a truly just world could look like.
Okay, so wow, if even our most basic political beliefs can be shaped by ideology, where do we go from here? It's a little like realizing the world is a lot more complicated than you thought, and you can't go back.
Yeah, it can feel overwhelming for sure. But I think the key is to not shy away from that complexity, to realize there aren't any easy answers or one-size-fits-all solutions.
So we're not trying to find the right ideology or the perfect set of principles, right? It's more about understanding that every viewpoint, every way of looking at things has its own limitations, its own blind spots.
Exactly. It's about being willing to keep the conversation going, to listen to different perspectives, and to constantly question our own assumptions, even the ones we feel most certain about.
So let's get practical here. What can I, as just one person, actually do with this knowledge about law and ideology? Like, how can I apply this in the real world?
Well, first of all, always keep in mind that law is never truly neutral. It's always being shaped by power dynamics and these underlying ideologies. So be a critical thinker when it comes to legal information and the things politicians say. Ask yourself the hard questions. Whose voices are being heard? Whose interests are being put first? What assumptions are being made about fairness, justice, and what the state should be doing?
So it's about being an active participant, not just sitting back and accepting what those in power are telling us.
Exactly. And remember, even when things seem set in stone, ideologies can be challenged. They can change. History's full of examples of social movements that manage to shift the dominant narrative and create real, lasting change.
That's actually pretty encouraging to hear. So it's not about giving up on the fight for justice. It's about approaching it with like a healthy dose of skepticism, being open to challenging assumptions, and being committed to having these conversations and reflecting on what we believe.
That's it. And remember, you're not alone in this. There are tons of people and groups out there working to dismantle oppressive systems and build a more just and equal world.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into law and ideology. It's been a real mind bender, to be honest, but I feel like I've come away with a whole new understanding of how these things shape the world around us.
I'm glad to hear that. And really, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to uncover, so many more questions to explore. So keep digging deeper, keep questioning, and keep pushing for that better world.
I will, for sure. Thank you so much for guiding me through this complex and fascinating topic. It's definitely given me a lot to think about, and even more importantly, it's made me want to get out there and do something.
That's what it's all about. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep fighting for a better world.
And to all our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and given you something to ponder. Remember, even in a world full of ideology, we can still make a difference. Until next time, keep thinking critically, folks.